All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Thank you for the dramatic entrance there, Frankie. I love that shirt, man.
Oh, anytime. You know, I'm masking, what happened to my fucking face. Okay.
Yeah, what you got a battle scar there, man. What's going on?
A wound. Here we go, man. So I'm a nut job when it comes to volleyball. For those listening and, watching things like that, love to play volleyball. Okay, well, I took a fucking heater to the face this week, all right? It should have been this ball should have been sent to the center of the earth. Okay, why this guy is playing in a backyard league behooves me, John. Okay, so you know what I did? I took one right to the dome. Check it out. What happened?
Of course, it had to be a super athlete. It couldn't be just some random, 5'4", woman in the middle of the net. It has to be some super athlete that blasted you, right?
Absolutely, 100%. He was a mammoth of a man. Pretty sure he was a Norwegian god at one point in his life. Yes.
Well, I think the point here, Frankie, stick to what you're good at. Stick to fantasy football. Right. Okay.
I'll just sip my coffee in my fantasy football mug, baby.
There you go. Lick your wounds, brother. Lick your wounds. Welcome to the show, everybody. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media. Thank you so much for following. We've got some really good information and some funny memes and things that we post on there as well. Really good follow. Frankly, Fantasy Football on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Frankly Fantasy F. Frankie, we got a great show today.
Yeah,
we're going to get into some news and notes. We got a few things happening from the preseason games we can talk about here. We're going to do a little hype train. We're going to bring out that hype train whistle. Hopefully not hear that screech too much anymore. It's the worst drop ever. And we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, which is New Faces and New Places Part 2. And it's going to be wide receivers and tight ends. Going to be a great show today, guys. Great show. Yeah. We're getting close to the truth, baby. Couple weeks here, man. It was nice to see a lot of good football. It was nice to see some starters play. We got a little bit of action, man. All right.
It's about time. Jeez, man. We're salivating over here.
I know. We're going to jump into first. Let's discuss a little strategy of handcuffs. You don't hear a lot about it anymore. It used to be an extremely popular strategy. It's kind of gone down the wayside a little bit. And I think mainly because there are so many committees in the backfields now. There's not a ton of clear-cut workhorse studs that have a clear backup who's amazing, like a Alexander Madison, for instance, with Dalvin Cook. That was always a no-brainer. He'd get drafted in the 9th, 10th round, something like that. And it was always a great handcuff. He'd come in, he'd score you 20 points while Dalvin Cook missed a game or two. It was nice. Not a lot of those situations now, Frankie. How do you go about, what are your thoughts on handcuffing your stud running backs?
So, John, a few things. One is, I struggle a little bit. I know you're going to hit on this, so I don't want to take your thunder, but I struggle with actually taking my own handcuff. And I know you'll hit on that here in just a minute. But another way I look at this too, John, is I'm looking for a guy that's kind of either has had prior injury history or is kind of on the bubble, right? I look at it like a Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, look at it as like, a more of a split backfield in a sense, or a good example of, injury would be a Javonte to a Saman JP Ryan, right? Those kind of guys. So I really look for prior, injury history and the current setup of what's happening. Is it really a true number one running back there? Or if something were to happen to one of the tandem in the backfield, like, can I have that guy that's going to step up to the plate? So that's usually where I go, John. And again, I didn't want to take your thunder because I think the way you look at things from a strategy is pretty cool. If you wanted to kind of describe how you handcuff and what you look to do.
Yeah, there's one or two situations where I'll draft my own handcuff. I mean, the number one being if I get CMC, if I draft Christian McCaffrey in that first three spots there, I'm drafting Elijah Mitchell. He's a stud in his own right when he has had the ball, has had the playing time in the backfield to himself. Very electric. I mean, the guy's very, very good. So if something did happen to CMC, I do want to protect that asset and get Elijah Mitchell because you can plug him right in. You're not going to get CMC production, but you're going to get very, very good production. Still probably running back one production, especially in that offense. But my strategy really is to take other people's handcuffs. And the reason being, think about it financially as a financial transaction. You've got your own handcuff. You lose your stud. Yeah, you don't miss anything. It's a net zero gain. You're actually going down a little bit because that person isn't going to perform as well as, say, a CMC.
Mm-hmm.
I like taking other people's handcuffs because if I take Elijah Mitchell and I don't have Christian McCaffrey, the Christian McCaffrey owner loses McCaffrey, doesn't have his handcuff. It's a loss for my opponent and it's a gain for me. I now gain potentially a running back 1 on my team that I can use, or I can trade right over to that CMC owner, take a little piece from him, and it doesn't even have to be a big piece. It's nothing I'm losing. Yeah, snake it. That's really my strategy when doing that. I think that you have to look at it that way. Now, you don't want to clog your roster up. You got to be careful. Most of our leagues are pretty shallow benches. We've got, typically 5 bench spots. Yeah. And I like that because it makes people more active. It makes people trade. You can't just sit on guys and backup QBs and all of that. But you do have to be careful. You don't want to clog your roster. You want to be able to have that flexibility and freedom on the waiver wire to pick guys up each and every week, or if you have to stream, say, tight end or QB.
Mm-hmm.
So be careful. Take 1, maybe 2 of those guys. I always like to have 1 of somebody else's handcuff on my bench and then 1 flyer, just a guy, a wide receiver, maybe a rookie, maybe somebody really young, maybe in a new spot, new team, just to see if I can catch lightning in a bottle. If nothing happens, you can drop that guy. But yeah, be careful loading up too much on handcuffs. Now, with the handcuffs this year, we talked about the only clear handcuffs that I saw, Elijah Mitchell, clearly with CMC. I think he's the obvious one. I think the other one that's really interesting is Tyler Algier, second-year running back for the Atlanta Falcons. This guy really did have a breakout last year as a running back.
Awesome.
They ran the ball so damn much. Well, now they've got Bijan Robinson, who obviously everybody's projecting to just be an absolute ball hog. I mean, just carry the ball nonstop. But Tyler Algier, you're taking Bijan Robinson in the top 7, 5 to 8 picks, something like that. He's going very, very early, running back 3 or 4 on most people's boards. So I would like to protect that asset because knowing that they've got that offense, tailored around Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier can step in. We've seen him do well. That's what I like to see is guys that I know can perform. So I think Tyler Algier is a good one. Another one on my board, Frankie, and I want you to talk about this for a second, is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. We haven't seen a lot of him, so he's not a name that most people are familiar with. But why do you think he's a good handcuff to Nick Chubb?
Well, because he's from what we saw with the sample size last year, he played excellent and he fit the mold very well from the offensive scheme to what the Browns are looking to do. And so the flashes that they have, it gives them confidence to say, okay, hey, we know we don't need to sign Kareem Hunt. We know we don't need to bring in another guy. They also have Demetric Felton. They also have Hall, and they also have, I think it's John Kelly as well. And so there's a stable behind him, but nobody that's really taking the reins. So it truly is, Jerome Ford is that handcuff to Chubb. Now, he has been banged up a little bit throughout this offseason, but they're just making sure that they're, taking care of this guy and knowing that he's playing a pivotal role as a backup to Chubb. So, John, I love Jerome Ford. And I think especially in a dynasty league, if you can get him or get at least, your mitts on him just for a little bit, I probably would. Or to your point, if you do draft a Nick Chubb, this might be a guy in your last pick that you want to hold on to as a just in case, right? God forbid, but as a just in case. So yeah, I do like Jerome Ford a lot here, John, as a handcuff.
Yeah, a couple other guys I want to mention here, and I don't even know if this guy's a handcuff. This is more of an insurance policy. Especially if, you have a keeper league and you may be looking at keeping Josh Jacobs. I'm talking about Jameer White. I think I'm going to be looking to target him, or Zamir White. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think I'm going to be looking at targeting him, Frank. I don't think we're going to get any news about Josh Jacobs moving forward. And it's a real possibility. Zamir White starts week 1 for the Raiders.
Very
What are
possible.
your thoughts on him?
Very possible, John. I mean, Josh Jacobs, as of a few days ago, left Vegas. He is
leaving
no
Las Vegas. He just Nicolas Caged that shit, man. He's
got
gone.
the fuck out. And so right now, John, I think they drafted this guy, last year. And so he's a rookie last year, right? Came in and this year, and he has an opportunity to really show face and provide insight as to why, he could take the reins. And so there's actually been a little bit of hype around Zamir White if something happens to that of Josh Jacobs. So I think that this guy could be a massive surprise, very very similar, in my opinion, to that of a Rashad White. I think that gives a very good context into who this guy could potentially be.
All right. I like that. What about two other guys I just want to mention briefly here, Frank? I wanted to get your thoughts on these guys. If you think that these would be valuable handcuffs. Jaylen Warren backing up Najee Harris for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Samaje Perine, who's backing up or potentially starting for the Denver Broncos with Javonte Williams. What are your thoughts on these two?
Love Perine. Love Perine. The sample size that we've already seen, he is, again, I always say the classic James White role just because we've seen how effective that is, but he truly is that. But what he also showed is he can carry some of the load. When Mixon was out last year for the Bengals, he stepped in and was a 3-down back, and he did very well. And so that's why he's a excellent insurance policy if you are going after Javonte Williams. And the beautiful part of this is Javonte, you're getting at a massive value right now, and you can get Samaje Perine at a great value. So this is where something would make sense. Now, it would also make sense, John, for example, if you drafted Javonte, I am 100% going after Perine just to screw you. And just to make sure also that this is a guy that you might be able to plug and play late in the year after, things have been beaten and battered, right? Javonte's, going through the trenches again, and God forbid he gets hurt as well. Samaje Perine is going to be the guy that can absolutely be a flex player, RB2, stepping in right now with trade value. So I love Samaje Perine. Now, with Jaylen Warren, it's a bit different. And I say that because, John, I actually think Jaylen Warren might eat into Najee's playing time a bit. I don't necessarily look at him as a pure backup, right? There's a big difference. Like when we talk Nick Chubb to Jerome Ford is a pure backup, right? At this point in time. Jaylen Warren, for me, is on the precipice of, is he actually stealing a little bit of market share time from that of Najee Harris? And when he got the opportunity last year, man, he was dynamic. He was excellent. And so for me, Jaylen Warren's very interesting as well, because you actually might be able to get a little bit more playing time out of a guy that you can draft in a super late round in Jaylen Warren than what people I actually think might happen. Because if Najee has a year again to where he had last year, to where his yards per carry were down, he's not breaking as many tackles. And he just kind of looked like he not lost a step, but he looked slow, I guess is a better way to put it, compared to the prior year with Ben Roethlisberger and all this stuff.
He didn't get the targets either.
No.
That was his biggest value.
Exactly.
He didn't get targets last year.
Jaylen Warren could be interesting. Very interesting.
All right. I like that, man. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about, there's a couple of split backfields now. Actually, there's a lot of split backfields. And I happen to notice myself doing some of these mock drafts and looking through drafts is, you see these guys, like in Detroit, like in Seattle, and you're like, well, you don't love them because it's a split backfield. Mm-hmm. But these guys are worth drafting because they're not all going to be a split backfield throughout the whole year. The benefit about a split backfield versus a true handcuff is that this is a guy you can use in the meantime in case of emergency, in case of bye weeks. And if something happened to the other guy, if he misses a couple of games, you've got an absolute beast that's just a sheer volume play. So I do like these guys. And some of these guys are climbing up my board because of that reason. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily love them to start, but most of these guys you can get in the 7th through 10th rounds. And I think they can bring a lot of value. And if something does happen, I think you possibly have gold there. Let's talk about that with the Detroit backfield with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, anything happens to either of those two, massive skyrocket. Seattle Seahawks. We've already got kind of it might be especially with Kenneth Walker being a little banged up with a groin injury. I mean, it could be 60-40. It could be 40-60, for Charbonnet. So Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, I think they're both in that same category. We've done this for years with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones in Green Bay. I don't love A.J. Dillon. I don't love him on my bench. But if something happens to Aaron Jones, which he hasn't always been the pillar of health, A.J. Dillon in this new offense with Jordan Love, I mean, he's going to skyrocket. He's going to get a ton of volume. Baltimore, the same way. You're looking at J.K. Dobbins, who we're really not sure is 100% healthy. Gus Edwards, both of these guys, Melvin Gordon's in there as well. So really interesting. Those are guys that you can take. You're not going to feel good about having them on your team, but if something does happen to the other running back, you've just got massive volume. Why don't you talk about a couple of other teams here, Frankie, and what their backfields look like?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting with Buffalo. Like everybody's saying, Buffalo is James Cook all the way. I need to see it. And from the
I don't buy it.
Yeah, the value that you can get. So we're looking at James Cook and Damien Harris here, guys. The value you can get for Damien Harris to potentially step in and be and you mentioned it in Seattle, right? Thinking about Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, it could be very similar to that. And this brings me back a good example of this is Denver Broncos with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. It was literally almost a 50-50 split 2 years ago. Right. I could see this potentially unfolding if Damien Harris takes that opportunity. Like, I just didn't think we saw that many flashes from James Cook last year to where it's like, wow, this guy. I'll do a hot take here. I actually think I saw more flashes from Jaylen Warren than I actually did with that of James Cook. And so that's why I think with Buffalo bringing in Damien Harris, I think it's really interesting. John, another one too, just right out of the gate is, what are we going to do with Washington here? Because Washington, I mean, yeah, you have Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson has looked okay. I mean, nothing crazy, but they also have Antonio Gibson who's biting at the bit. They have a few others coming down. Like, it's just like there is not, in my opinion, 100% a clear-cut guy. Yeah, they're going with Robinson. They're rolling him out there. But, I mean, we'll see, right? Like, we'll see what happens. Ron Rivera has been known to do some crazy things with split backfields and things like that. Look at case in point in Carolina before Christian McCaffrey. Right. So there's a few interesting places, man.
Yeah, and Miami's interesting.
Miami.
I don't love Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert on their standalone value, but something happens to either one of them and they have the backfield alone. I mean, you've also got Devon Achane in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another one where there's three guys that if something happens to one of them, the other two are going to have value there. Chicago, you touched on briefly with Khalil Herbert. We're going to hear in the news, they just signed Damien Harris as well, or Damien Williams, I'm sorry, as well. And then you've
with the Raiders,
got the rookie out there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The
Damien
Raiders
Williams to be the Raiders.
Yeah.
But with Chicago, I mean, Herbert, absolutely. And then you also have the rookie, Roshan Jenkins. You also have Deontay Foreman, right? So, I mean, to your point, I mean, I think Herbert did excellent in this preseason game when he got the touches. So I think it's slowly bleeding that a little bit more. But to your point, I mean, dude, if he goes down or if he needs a break and Deontay Foreman breaks open, we saw what he can do. We saw what he can do in Carolina last year. So that's also interesting. And John, how about the Saints? We haven't even talked about the Saints. Right?
That's a nightmare.
That's cool. That's a nightmare, especially if Kareem Hunt ends up going there. Now, he walked away without a deal, so that's probably pretty telling. But what happens with Jamal Williams, with Kendre Miller, with Alvin Kamara being out 3 games? What happens if Jamal Williams comes in and takes the bull by the horns again? That is a miserable situation.
Yeah. And we've got some X factors here too. I mean, we're talking about handcuffs and split backfields and, we're doing all these mock drafts. There's going to be a couple of guys that are going to throw a monkey wrench in a few teams here. X factor running back sitting out there, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is still not on a team. Obviously, the two favorites right now have been Miami and the Jets. He goes to either of those two teams. It has serious implications to the backfields for both of those teams. Huge. So that's going to be something we're on watch. We're monitoring. Kareem Hunt, you just touched on it. Right now, he's kind of floating back and forth, just trying to get the biggest paycheck he can get. Yep. It's his last paycheck, most likely. So that's what he's looking for. 2-3-year deal, maybe. But he's bouncing back and forth from Indianapolis and New Orleans.
Vikings as well.
Vikings could be, I mean, that would really fuck things up for Alexander Madison in Minnesota. Jonathan Taylor, who off my board.
Completely gone.
Completely off my board. I don't want anything to do with him whatsoever. Kareem Hunt could go to Indianapolis and really fuck that situation up. Or he goes to New Orleans as an Alvin Kamara fill-in for those 3 weeks at least. And then he screws up everyone's value because you can't sit on Kamara that long knowing Kareem Hunt's still going to be there. They're very similar skill sets. And then Kendre Miller's not going to see the field as much when you've got veterans on the field. And Jamal Williams is going to be taking all the touchdowns. So it's really hard to piece out, where all the fantasy points are going to come from. It's like every running back on that team is going to have like 5 fantasy points, split between the 4 of them. If one guy was there, he'd have 20 points, but 4 guys, 5 points each, I think, really. Yeah. All right, man. That sounds great. Let's get to some news, baby.
The season as your listeners don't expect. Flip out.
News and notes.
All right. Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Much to my chagrin, being a Browns fan, and I'm probably going to go to that game in week 1. He is on track to play week 1 amid the calf injury. We're going to keep monitoring that. I think it's going to be on the news every single week because it is the most high profile player with an injury that affects everyone around him coming into the season here. Devontae Adams, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, left a joint practice with the 49ers this week with a lower leg injury. Apparently, according to the coach, they avoided a serious injury, but they are taking a look at that. Keep an eye on that. We'll have updates about him next week as well. But it makes me very nervous taking a guy that high profile without coming into week 1 with an injury already. So stay tuned. Dallas, the news coming out about Dallas running backs here. Dallas is expected to work in other running backs to ease Tony Pollard's workload. I think we've been assuming that for a long time. I think initially, Frankie, his ADP has reflected him having the backfield alone. And I think we've all talked about, we're all a little bit nervous about that. So what are you doing here with Tony Pollard? Is he moving up or down your board based on this news?
John, for me, I already thought he was too high to go with. I mean, people had him stack ranked as the number 5 running back or a top 7 guy, top 8 guy. That is not how I personally view Tony Pollard. I'm not saying taking away anything from him, but I think it's been pretty telling. Like they have come out multiple times and said, hey, we're going to limit his workload, or he's not going to be a pure 3-down back, or Tony Pollard himself doesn't want a full workload. And so, right, I think I think if you can get him in middle of 2 or back of 2, great. I think that's where he should be, right? But if you're pressing early 2 or back of 1 and you're sitting there and you're really debating between him or Derrick Henry or even going a receiver, Stephon Diggs at that point, John, I'm going the opposite way of Tony Pollard there. So I think that it definitely bodes well for longevity of the season. I think that's interesting, but from a fantasy perspective, it's got to be middle of 2, back of 2, early 3 for me to even remotely consider him at this point in time.
Tony Pollard is a little confusing for me. I don't know exactly how I feel about him. And because I haven't been able to really get a firm grip on how I feel, I've been avoiding him in the drafts. I think I've got cognitive dissonance going on. I do think he's being drafted at his ceiling.
Totally.
And I don't always like that. I like that with guys like Chubb. I like that with guys like Eckler. I like that with guys that
CMC.
They're probably going to perform at their ceiling.
Yep.
We've seen them do that at that point. We haven't seen Tony Pollard really do that on his own by himself. And I know that they've changed offensive coordinators, and I do think Mike McCarthy wants to go back to fucking Tecmo Bowl in the 1980s and run the ball every play. So the cognitive dissonance is that I think they are going to run a lot more than they have in the past. I think they want to take the ball out of Dak's hands he threw a lot of interceptions last year.
He's thrown a lot of interceptions in camp this year.
Yeah. Yes. And, that it seems to be a pattern there. And I think what they want to do is keep their defense off the field. They want to control. They scored too fast. They're upset because they scored too fast, so they want to slow things down, keep their defense off the field, get them rested and run the ball. But so that's why I'm like, but that makes me really like Tony Pollard. But it's hard for me to get there, man.
Where would you take him? Where would you draft him, John?
I'm typically not right now. I usually, if I see him and he's at the bottom of a tier break for me, I usually go receiver at that point. But I would feel much better, on that 2-3 turn in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, just like you said. I feel better about it there, but I need to see some more out of what they're going to do with their offensive scheme in that backfield.
Hey, by the way, Deuce Vaughn looked good, baby. Shout out, man. The little man out of Kansas State. I'm just saying.
He did. I know. So, are we looking at Deuce Deuce Vaughn, and when Ronald Jones comes back in week 3, they're going to work these guys in. Are we looking at a split backfield?
Davis as well. Davis showed some flashes too, but I mean, yeah, there's, to me, man, there really isn't a true clear cut number 2, even on the depth chart. Even if they're saying it's Davis or Ronald Jones, I don't see that. I see it being a little bit more muddied than what they actually think it is. Same difference with the Patriots, right? I don't think the Patriots have a true clear cut number 2. I see that actually being a very similar perspective there.
Which means we'll probably be discussing this week 1 waiver wires is what I'm guessing, because one of these guys will end up scoring a touchdown and everybody's going to go ape shit on the waiver wire for him.
The Sammy Watkins effect.
Yeah, yes, definitely the Sammy Watkins effect. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Raiders, like I ruined and buried the lead before, but the Raiders are looking to sign running back Damien Williams. This is clearly a panic move for Las Vegas.
Totally.
About Josh Jacobs. It doesn't look good. I don't want to keep talking about it, but right now, Josh Jacobs is off my board. This is a round 2 guy that I'm just not touching. I need to see him on the field, in the locker room, with a uniform on. I almost won't draft him until I see his helmet on his fucking head. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I just don't like it, man. All right, Frankie, let's get into a little, we got some preseason. So let's get into a little hype train here, man. You ready?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So let's look at some guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little video. We had some guys score. Hopefully I can do this and not screw up the technology here. But I'm going to play some videos here. And what I want you to do is tell me if, based on this play, are you getting on that hype train, or are you getting the fuck off the hype train?
All right.
Let me see if I can do this, Frank. Let's try to share my screen here.
And this is impressive for those listening. I mean, guys, this is next level shit on the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. All right, we're about to play some videos here, baby. Put that thing to full screen, John. Let's see it.
Let's
First
go.
and goal, 8-yard line, stick, end zone, Johnston, touchdown.
All right, well, that's Quentin Johnston, man. I mean, does that get you excited here? You get to see a little rookie Quentin Johnston, who we did a video about. What do you think of that?
You got that button ready? You got that button ready for that hype train? Start pulling that button, John. Push it, baby, because you know what? I'm hopping on this damn train. I'll tell you what, man. He's the guy. He's the guy that's going to fill in for that if Mike Williams, for if Keenan Allen gets hurt. He is just positioning himself to be a focal part of this offense. Maybe not this year, but in the future years. But for this year specifically for fantasy football, I am definitely jumping on the hype train because it has been proven Keenan Allen and Mike Williams cannot stay healthy the entirety of the year. It's not a knock on those guys. It's literally just they are getting old. And so I really believe that Quentin Johnston is in arguably, and we mentioned this on the rookie review, arguably the best position out of any other rookie receiver because of the high-flying offense and his quarterback that he has in Justin Herbert. So love Quentin Johnston, John.
You're on the hype train.
Hype train.
All right. I love that, man. Okay, let's get to a next guy here. This is a guy that we talked about today as well.
Okay.
Let's see a little
get into a little
Khalil
bear
Herbert
action
juice.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get a little Khalil Herbert juice here. What do you think?
Blitz coming from the Titans. Fields trying to maneuver away and is able to find Herbert with plenty of room to run again. A first down and more. There he goes with some blocks. Herbert still on his feet for the touchdown.
There it is. All right, Khalil Herbert. We got to see a touchdown there, man. So what are you thinking? You all over him right now?
Actually, yeah, John, I'm jumping on the hype train, man. I was not there because I thought it was going to be much more of a split backfield. But watching this dude catch out of the backfield is something that Deontay Foreman is not known for and has not been able to do effectively. Khalil Herbert showed that last year with David Montgomery when he was able to come in and on the ground as well. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, and I'll have to go back through the archives here, but I believe Khalil Herbert was averaging almost 5 yards a carry at one point last year towards the end. And so putting that on the table, looking at his receiving capabilities now, looking at Justin Fields getting more comfortable, now they have a number one in DJ Moore. It makes so much sense. I'm jumping on this hype train. And from a fantasy perspective, excellent value on a potential number one running back on a team.
Okay. This one I know is going to excite you, Frank.
I'm already on the hype train.
I know you are. Let's go ahead and play this guy.
Here this offseason. First touch for DJ Moore. They used him in a ton of ways in Carolina. This was one of them. And there he goes. Goodbye touchdown. Welcome to Chicago, DJ Moore.
Welcome to Chicago, DJ Moore. Now, I know that one gives you a little chub.
Dude, not bad for your first catch in your new team, right? Take it to the freaking house, 60 yards.
Just
Love
a little
John.
Step back behind the line of scrimmage, 60-yard touchdown. I mean, this could not have come at a better time. Literally, last episode, we talked about the Justin Fields, DJ Moore connection, the stack. First goddamn play together on a football field in a game, and touchdown, 60-yard touchdown. Woo,
I'm buying it, man. I'm buying it. I'm all in. I'm all in. I'm serious. I'm all in on DJ Moore and Justin Fields and that connection. I think it's going to be really interesting this year. I'm saying Justin Fields has a shot now with DJ Moore to be the first Chicago Bears quarterback to throw over 4,000 yards. I'm putting it out there.
Hey, and if Khalil Herbert can get some of that action out of the backfield, if instead of running the ball, Justin Fields scrambles and is taught to dump it off a little more to protect his own body, that's only good things for Khalil Herbert, man. It really is. As we saw, he's got that skill set. He just showed us that. All right, let's look at another one here. This one, I'm really warming up to this guy here, Frankie. Let's see how you feel about it.
All right.
Wilson delivers Sutton into the end zone. Touchdown, Denver.
Jerry Jeudy. Russell Wilson. I know you've already said, Frank, that you feel Russell Wilson's going to have a comeback year. Definitely. And have a much better year. And I really have been warming up to Jerry Jeudy. Yeah. I'm really liking him as a wide receiver too, or if I can get him as my flex, I feel great about that. I feel like we're in the midst of a Jerry Jeudy true breakout. Do you feel the same way?
100%. And the reason why I say that is because Sean Payton offense, love. Russell Wilson comeback season, I'm here for it. But here's why Jerry Jeudy makes sense to me, John. Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler are both gone. They are out for season due to injuries. So that leaves Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is primed for a massive takeoff. And now with Javonte Williams healthy, this is only going to help this offense. Because you got to remember, last year, Russell didn't have Javonte, right? And so that's a huge blow, right? And so now he does. He has Jerry Jeudy on the outside with Cortland. Yeah, fire it up. Love it.
All right. Let's get to another one here, man. This guy also could be real in line for a breakout as well. Let's take a look and see what Jahan Dotson did.
Okay.
When they're escape out of the pocket to the right. Howell working downfield. Jahan Dotson, a beautiful catch, sidesteps two tacklers and finds his way into the end.
Beautiful catch for Jahan Dotson, and you saw that was Sam Howell throwing on the ball. Yeah. How you feeling about that? You on the hype train here with Jahan?
You know what, John? I'm not. And I'm going to say that. So I'm actually not on the hype train.
Yikes. Really?
Shit.
Okay.
Because it's Sam Howell throwing him the ball. And in addition, you still have Terry McLaurin. You still have Curtis Samuel, who they are getting more and more involved. In addition, right, the Commanders have come out and said, EB has come out and said that he likes Antonio Gibson as well out of the backfield from a pass catching. So all of this to be said, I am not sure if Sam Howell can supply enough volume to support McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson, along with, right, Logan Thomas as a tight end, along with Antonio Gibson as a receiving back. So that's why it's not so much Jahan Dotson himself. I think he's insanely talented. I think it's the position that he's in his team. Does that make sense, Sean?
It does make sense. I mean, I am a fan of Jahan Dotson, but I've also tempering my expectations.
Right.
I'm not looking, I'm not targeting him. This is a guy, if I need wide receiver depth, I think he will have big plays. I think he will catch big touchdown passes, but it's not a guy I love throwing out there. It's a guy that I'm looking to plug in the right matchup and see if I can, hit some gold on a streaming basis, really. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at something else here. This is something we've been wanting to see for a little bit. Let's see how. Let's see how Jordan Love is doing so far in Green Bay.
Second and goal. Love looking, lofting, Dobbs caught.
Man, that was smooth.
Touchdown.
That was a smooth throw too.
It was a nice throw, and what I liked about it is that he's throwing into traffic.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that. I don't want them to play conservative. I don't want them just running the ball all the time. I want to see Jordan Love take those one-on-one jump balls into the end zone like that. And yes, that was Romeo Doubs, which, we can talk about him, and we'll do another hype train with Romeo Doubs, I'm sure, very soon. But Christian Watson in the end zone on a jump ball and Jordan Love not afraid to throw it to him. I like that. I like that a lot. You on that hype train? You on the Jordan Love looking good hype train right now?
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. John, I'm not. I'm not ready to do it yet. I think that we need to see way more than what we've seen. I think that it's a really good start. I think he was like 9 for 12, 70 some yards and a touchdown there to Doubs. So I think it's a really good start, but we need to see so much more than just that. So for me, and again, we're talking hype train, right? Are you willing to draft him? That's how we should phrase this. Like, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is and say, yes, I'm going to draft Jordan Love? For me, it's a no.
No, absolutely not. And you shouldn't draft him. I mean, even in a double quarterback league, he's a third quarterback at best to fill in on a bye week. But what I'm interested in, and the only reason I want to see Jordan Love and what he's doing is Christian Watson. I don't really care about Romeo Doubs. I just don't. I don't. There's so many guys that I would look at to fill in with depth that Doubs is just not one that really excites me, But Christian Watson, I'm interested in. And I am nervous drafting him because of Jordan Love. So I want to see that connection. I want to see Jordan Love throwing into traffic, throwing jump balls like that. It makes me feel better about Christian Watson.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the last one here, Frank. And this one's one I've been wanting to see for a little bit too. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Pickett to Pickens, man.
P to P.
P to P.
People on your hands with this young player.
On third down, pocket protected on a nice throw and completion. Down inside the 10 and in for a touchdown. George Pickens.
Yeah, it was a nice catch. It was a great juke move. It was running a little bit of yak there. I liked it, man. And I want to like George Pickens.
Yes,
I do. I want him to convince me to put him on my team because he's one of those guys that I see as a flyer pick that I think could pay off. His star is rising slowly, and it's a second year receiver. We know how that works now with receivers. I think he has an opportunity here to surpass Deontay Johnson, maybe put Deontay Johnson in that possession receiver role.
Totally.
Still might be valuable in PPR, but I think that Pickens is going to have. I think he's the big shining bright star on this team. Is that right?
Dude, I think hot take Pickens could end up being a top 20 receiver this year. Top 20. Okay. Super on the hype train.
So you're on the hype train.
I am I'm the leader of the fucking hype train. Okay. And here's the reason, John, is because we have seen year in and year out over the last 2 years, right? So I'm saying year in and year out of him making plays, of him making insane catches to where it's not a level of his ability. I actually think, and this is another hot take, I think he is, from an athletic standpoint and from a receiver ability standpoint, a top 10 receiver in this league from a pure ability standpoint. For me, if Pickett can get this right, and if he can get Pickens the ball, Pickens absolutely can be a top 20 receiver this year. And where he is being drafted, John, in my opinion, is sinful. I think you're getting immediate value on Pickens, and he could be your flex. Shit, he could even be your receiver 4 at this point in time if you went a 0 RB strat. Okay. So for me, man, I am absolutely high on Pickens, and I'm jumping on that hype train, baby.
All right, let's get into it, Frankie. This is part 2 of our new faces and new places.
All right.
We're doing wide receivers and tight ends. These are guys that were either traded or signed in the open market during the offseason as free agents. Mm-hmm. All right, Frankie, we're getting right into wide receivers here, and we're going to go in order of ADP. So this is the highest of ADPs, and this is your boy. I have a feeling, man, is this a preview of a potential champion for you, maybe? I know you love taking risks on your champions. We're talking about Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, break it down for us, man.
I literally can't stop moving. I can't stop moving because I'm so excited to talk about this guy. I'm like I'm foaming at the mouth here. Okay, yes, this guy is absolutely a guy I'm targeting on everything. He actually is up there, for contention to be one of my champions. It's a big role. It's a big thing. They need to earn that. But for me, John, love him. ADP 43, receiver 18 right now. He's a guy that could we could be talking about him being a first round pick in fantasy football next year in a 12, 14 man league, back half of the round. That is how high his ceiling is. Now, that's also to say, his floor is very low. And for the reason being, because if something happens from his mental state, right, we've seen that he has had problems with that, to where, right, he needs to be separated and spend some time away from the team. We've seen that, right? So that's really risky. We've also seen him not play for what feels like a little over a year, which it has been. So taking all that into consideration, his floor could be low, but I am all here for the high side of him. I think you can get him in round 4 or 5. And John, I think it's an absolute steal, man.
When he played last, I know this, it's been 2 years.
2 years.
But when he played last, he was the wide receiver 5.
It's crazy.
He was the wide receiver 5. Mm-hmm. And he would have come in as a first or second round pick in fantasy drafts had he played that next year. So yeah, man, I mean, I think it's one of the scariest picks to make. Definitely. I love it. Based on what we all are expecting Trevor Lawrence to level up this year, they've surrounded him with more weapons. He's got a true wide receiver 1 now with Calvin Ridley and a great supporting cast around him. They can take the roof off. They can, get you inside and out and a little dink and dunks with ETN and with
Ingram
and Christian Kirk. So it's a very dangerous offense right now. And Calvin Ridley's in an unbelievable spot. Mm-hmm. All signs are pointing that he's been great in camp, that he's just doing things that other guys can't do. He's got physical abilities as a receiver, with his route running, with his contested catches. He's an end zone monster. He's really got it all. So if he's got his shit together, it seems like he's got a good connection with Trevor Lawrence. I do love it. And I know we just talked about it in the last episode. It's one of your favorite stacks.
Easily, because of the value too. You're not having to go up and we mentioned Lamar and Mark Andrews. We mentioned Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. This is a cheaper stack that I love.
It's a 4th and 5th round stack, which is much safer because you've already got 3 studs. So you feel a lot better about doing that. Yeah. All right, cool. I love it, man. I think the sky's the limit for Calvin Ridley. He's going to be in a lot of my DFS lineups as well. I think he's going to have some of those games that are just absolutely atomic. All right, big one just happened here a little while ago. Fresh face, new face and new place. We've got DeAndre Hopkins, D-Hop with the Tennessee Titans. All right, roll it out for me, man. Does D-Hop still have it? He's been a perennial top 5 receiver in the league. Had some injury risks, that was on a team with injury all around them, with Kyler Murray and some of the other players there. But Is he going to Tennessee to die, or do you think he's going to bring back some value?
John, I'm going to go on the opposite end of what a lot of people think. I think he's going to bring back some value. I really do. I think, and the reason being is because, guys, last year he had 64 receptions, 717 yards, 3 touchdowns. What that averages out to when he played, he averaged 16.7 fantasy points a game. Okay, so I think Tannehill is absolutely going to be able to support him, right? We've seen that previously with A.J. Brown before A.J. Brown left. So for me, I am high on this. Let me rephrase that. For me, I like D-Hop still, and I will draft him still in the 5th or 6th round. If I am being asked to draft him any earlier, the answer is going to be no, because I think that you can find other gems that are in a better situation. Again, Tennessee is not super great. Tannehill is not super great. Malik and Wills and Will Levis are not super great options if something were to happen to Tannehill. And outside of this, I actually think this might help Treylon Burks a bit more, because now Treylon Burks isn't going to be asked to be a true number one. He has time to develop under this guy. I think this will also help Derrick Henry a bit more. But for D-Hop itself, it's tough. I still, and I'm saying I will still draft him in that 5th or 6th round if I'm on the back end of the 5th. But I would way temper expectations in terms of what are we really expecting from a amount of receptions and from the amount of yardage per game.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way about D-Hop. Obviously a ridiculously talented receiver who can bring value and probably give you a pretty safe floor.
Yeah.
The reason I do like him is exactly what you're saying. It's not him. It's not his situation. It's not his quarterback. It's the value of him. It's where he's going. So if I can get him in the 5th, 6th round, I do like that, because that's kind of a running back dead zone anyway. And at that point, I'm looking at filling my flex spot, or I'm looking at, a 3rd, 4th receiver. And I love D-Hop in that situation. I really don't want to roll him out as a wide receiver 2 if I can help it.
Yeah, totally agree. Good call.
As a flex, I love it because I do think he has the talent. I do think he's a shifty, wily vet. He's going to get his. But at the same time, the ceiling's definitely capped, I think, in my mind with D-Hop. Okay, let's get to your boy. This is a guy. He's fighting to be one of your champions here too, Frank.
He totally is.
Fun battle between Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore as your champion this year. Yeah. DJ Moore left Carolina. Thank God. My Jesus. Fuck. Yeah. And now he is with Chicago Bears. He is with Justin Fields. We just played a clip earlier. His first catch with the team is a 60-yard touchdown, all done on his legs. It was a quick screen and gone. Talk about DJ Moore.
Yeah, I love him. I love it. Guys, I can't talk more highly of this guy. He's played in such a shit team with Carolina for years, with a carousel of quarterbacks, with not a very good team. And it has been brutal for him. And he has still performed very well. He is the diamond in the rough, guys. I'm telling you. And now you pair him on a team that has good running backs, good offensive line, a great up and coming quarterback, in my personal opinion, and a very good supporting cast. This is also the best supporting cast he's ever played with for other receivers, right? He has Darnell Mooney, he has Claypool, he has Tyler Scott, right? He has Cole Kmet. There's these other guys that can also take some of that burden or some of that double coverage off of him more times than not. And teams are going to have to respect Justin Fields' legs. So he also opens up the makeshift downfield plays to where when he's scrambling, when Justin Fields is scrambling, you see DJ Moore start taking off down the field. We're going to see a lot of those plays. Think about Russell Wilson, years ago with Doug Baldwin. I think that that's a very good comparison to what we could see with DJ Moore in that of Justin Fields. So for me, man, knowing that he's ADP 54, average draft position 54. He's receiver 22 right now. And he averaged last year 11.7 points per game in PPR. John, I think this is gold. You can get him in that 5th or back into 4th, early 5th round right now. I love DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore's he's finished like every year that he's played as wide receiver, 24, 25, 22, 23. They're putting him right there. You're buying him at that price. That's his floor in my mind. And that's where he is right now. And everything, all the entire situation he's in is so much better. And we just saw the connection he's got with Justin Fields.
Totally.
So I see him as one of the best values in the draft. I think you're drafting him at his floor rather than drafting him at his absolute ceiling. But I think he very well could end the season as a running or a wide receiver 1, the top 12 guy. There's no doubt in my mind. I love the situation he's in. I love where his head's at, and I love what I've seen so far. Okay, Frankie, let's get to our fourth guy here. Brandon Cooks, little tumultuous year last year with the Houston Texans with Brandon Cooks. Finally got out. I think this guy is really under everyone's radar. I don't think a lot of people are really thinking or talking about Brandon Cooks right now. He's now with the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to be opposite CeeDee Lamb. You've also got Michael Gallup there. What are you thinking about Brandon Cooks this year?
Guys, if you can get Brandon Cooks as your flex, or if you can get him as your receiver 4, gold. That's gold mine right there. That is trade bait. That is depth. That is so much there. And the reason being is because, to your point, he had a shit year last year in Houston with a awful team, terrible team. Couldn't be worse team. He still had 700 yards. He still had 3 touchdowns, 57 yards receiving, or 57 receptions, excuse me. And he still averaged 11.2 points a game in PPR. So even in a terrible year, he was still receiver 3 worthy. So for me, going to a team that absolutely passes a lot, to where Dak is going to need somebody opposite of CeeDee Lamb, to where everything coming out of camp, John, is saying where he's actually beating out Michael Gallup for the number 2. I think that if Brandon Cooks can solidify himself as the number 2 receiver on that offense, I think that there's a lot of great value here. ADP being 97, he's receiver 41. You can get him super late, guys, and just be happy that you have a nice depth piece on a high-flying offense. That's where my mind goes with this shot.
I think he's going to get a lot of snaps too, because CeeDee Lamb is going to, towards the end of the last season, and I think what they're going to do this year, CeeDee Lamb plays mostly in the slot. You know, so I think you're going to see Brandon Cooks split out much more often. Yeah. All right. I like that, man. Is this a guy that you're feeling good about in your flex? You're saying, I mean,
he's
totally. ADP is what?
97,
8, 9. Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. That's a good value. You're not paying too much for him. And I think it's a guy that's worth taking a chance on. Really. All right. Let's get to this guy. I know we're both not on this hype train right here, but Odell Beckham Jr. Went from sitting on the couch to now playing with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. All right, Frankie. Odell Beckham Jr., you on or off? What's going on?
So I'm not on the hype train with him, be crystal clear, but that also doesn't necessarily mean that I hate his value. Like we got to be able to delineate, right? And so for me, looking at ADP 107, right? Super late, guys, like 107, you're looking, round 10, right? Round 9, round 11, around that area to be able to draft this guy. Receiver 45, if he's sitting there, and you've already drafted, right, 2 stable running backs, let's say 3 receivers that you have, I'm not opposed to saying, okay, you know what? I'll take a flyer on OBJ as a 4th or 5th guy on my receiver perspective. And then if something does pan out, awesome. Then I have something to trade with here. So for me, it's a value thing. Now, there's another guy that we'll talk about. I'll just lump him in. Like the next guy, John, is Elijah Moore, right underneath him at ADP 109. So for me, when I'm looking at Elijah Moore compared to OBJ, for me personally, I am leaning Elijah Moore. And it's not because I'm a ride and die Browns guy. It's strictly because I think Elijah Moore is in a better situation with Deshaun Watson. He's not expected to be a number 1. He's Amari Cooper there. You have a better running attack. You have a better offensive line. So all of that plays into consideration when I'm looking, because this is what you're going to have to look at in this specific round. Are you taking OBJ or are you taking Elijah Moore? And for me, in this situation,
it's not even close.
Yeah.
It's not even close for me. It's Elijah Moore. And really, in this stage in the draft, when I'm looking round 10 plus, your team is established. You've got your starters. You've got even backups. You've probably got, 4 running backs at this point, probably 4 or 5 receivers at this point. This isn't a guy I'm looking to draft and say, you know what? I need some safety. I need, I need a guy who's done something in the past. No, man, I'm taking youth all day long. Those picks that I'm drafting 10 through 15 or whatever the rounds are in your draft, I'm going for youth. These guys that are right next to it, OBJ, He'll flash. He'll have some good games. He'll be a guy you can plug and play. No question about it. He might be inconsistent. I think he has lost a step for sure. Injury concerns, no question. But I'm taking Elijah Moore. I'm taking Zay Flowers over OBJ. I want youth, and I want something that's going to give me something, pop. Be the next Christian Watson for me. Be the next Chris Olave for me. Amon-Ra. Be that guy. That's what I'm looking for, and that's why OBJ is not even close to on my board at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. Elijah Moore, you talked about him. Yeah, I like Elijah Moore, especially in a PPR league. Elijah Moore is going to be playing in the flex most of the time, or in the slot most of the time. Again, though, this is all about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
How does Deshaun Watson play? All news from camp, everything that I've seen and heard so far is that Elijah Moore is happy. He's in a good situation, has a good connection with Deshaun Watson. If that continues, I think he's got PPR value for your flex even. All right, Juju Smith-Schuster now becoming a bit of a journeyman here. Yeah. Now signed, leaves the Chiefs and now signs with the New England Patriots. What do you think about Juju in New England here, Frank?
It's interesting. I'm very interested, John. And I say that because Juju was very quiet last year. And what I mean by quietly productive. 78 receptions, 933 yards and 3 touchdowns. Guys, he averaged 11.5 points a game in PPR. Juju did. Now he's going to a completely different situation. Run first team, Devontae Parker on the opposite end, still have Kendrick Bourne. They still have 2 tight ends that they're going to be throwing the ball to often. And it's Mac Jones. The question is, do you believe in Mac Jones? We're going from Patrick Mahomes to Mac Jones. We're going from Ben Roethlisberger to Mac Jones. That's a huge fall off from what we've seen Juju play with.
Is Mac Jones good? Is he good?
Well, here I'll answer that in an interesting way. After the rookie season, I would have said hell yes. After college, I would have said hell yes. After last year, no. And so I don't know. And they revamped what they're doing. They're looking at things a bit differently. They're changing. They
got rid of Matt Patricia calling the play.
Exactly.
That was got rid of Matt Patricia. Experiment. They were awful. Thank God.
Here's what's interesting about Mac Jones, and I know we're ranting here for a second, but Bailey Zappi's also right behind him, and there's something special about this Zappi kid, man. I mean, he was NCAA record holder.
Name is so dumb. Hi, my name is Bailey Zappi. It's so Jesus.
But to your point, man, Mac Jones has a lot of pressure on him. Let me put it like that, and so. Can Juju help Mac Jones is the question. And I think so. I don't know how much Mac Jones can actually support multiple receivers that aren't necessarily any of them are receiver ones, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Juju's value has always been in the red zone. He's always been a touchdown guy playing out of the slot and just a big slot receiver in the back of the end zone, much like a Cooper Kupp. With Patrick Mahomes, that works out great. But again, you can't predict touchdowns, and you can't predict touchdowns in New England either.
Right.
They're not going to get down there and throw Juju the ball. They're going to throw it to a running back out of the backfield, or they're going to run the ball 3 times on the fucking goal line. I mean, that's just what they do. So yeah, I think he's got a decent floor. I don't see a ceiling at all.
No,
I don't. I think his ceiling is super, super low. But it's a guy that you can take a chance. Where's he going, Frank? It's pretty safe to be able to take him.
Oh, God. Yeah. He's ADP 119, average draft positions 119, guys. So, we're thinking 10th, 11th, 12th round.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong at that point for him. All right, let's move on to a couple of guys here. These guys aren't going to be, we're going to breeze through some of these guys because they're not going to be super relevant. But you do need to know where they are because these guys will be talked about. You can pick them up as either flyers at the end of your draft, or these are going to be waiver wire guys. These are going to be the guys that'll score in week 1, and you're going to go, oh shit, I got to get Allen Lazard, which we'll get right into. Allen Lazard leaving Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, going with Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets. I think it was really Rodgers saying, hey, help a brother out. He's my buddy. I've got a connection. We can bring him in. He can help Garrett Wilson. I think really that's the main takeaway there. Without an injury to Garrett Wilson, I don't see a ton of value for Allen Lazard for fantasy, but it is good to know he is there and somebody to keep an eye on. Adam Thielen leaving Minnesota, going to Carolina. Do you care at all?
I actually do. For me, as crazy as that sounds, I do. Wow. I'm actually targeting Adam Thielen later in my drafts. I think that he looks the best that he's looked in years from what I've seen in this training camp. So for me, John, again, we're not talking like this is the guy I'm putting on, you know what I mean, that I'm putting on the face of my team. But this is a guy that I'm interested in potentially targeting super late round, ADP being 134, right receiver 54. Get him real late. Could be receiver 1 on the Carolina Panthers.
He could be. I don't know how valuable that role is. And like I said, my strategy, drafting at 134, this is my flyer category. This is where I'm taking, I want to target guys like Sky Moore and get a little piece of that offense.
Justin Ross.
With Zay Flowers or Justin Ross. Or, these are the Jonathan Mingo. I'd rather have Mingo than Adam Thielen. There's just more, what Adam Thielen is.
Yeah.
I just don't like a guy that long in the tooth that late in the draft. Speaking of, we got another one right here. Jacoby Myers leaving New England, PPR monster, and he's heading over to Las Vegas with the Raiders. I really think he's going to, with Darren Waller leaving, with, Devontae Adams being there, you got the naked fucking mole rat still, but I think Jacoby Myers could make a play for the number 2 target on this team. What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally could. Totally could, especially with Mac Hollins no longer there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to DJ Chark. DJ Chark leaving the Detroit Lions, and he's now with the Carolina Panthers as well. Do you see any value with DJ Chark at all with the Carolina Panthers?
I'm honestly, John, I'm not going to draft him. I'm not drafting him until I see something crazy. He's a nice little comfy, cozy blanket for Bryce Young. But from a fantasy perspective, this is a guy that you can pick up on waivers or something along those lines. To your point, I'm not really willing to take him. I would rather take a high flyer.
Yeah. All right, let's look at some of these other guys here. Just for your information, you'll probably see them on the waiver wire, but just know where they are. Paris Campbell, absolute burner. We haven't seen him on the field a ton. He's with the New York Giants now. Mecole Hardman left the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, and he's now with the Jets as well. They're just going to try to throw Aaron Rodgers some talent and see what he can do with it. Richie James now with the Kansas City Chiefs. Allen Robinson. Oh, God, this guy. You want to talk about
him?
Seriously, I don't want to see his name. He is dead to me. We were high on him, and he took an absolute shit with everything in front of him there for the taking. And fuck you, Allen Robinson. He's now with Pittsburgh. Oh, good. I get to hate him in Pittsburgh now. So that's wonderful. That works out really well. Robert Woods is now in Houston. Don't care at all about that. Robert Woods, it was great to see you catch passes. I'm sorry you're probably not going to this year. Marvin Jones Jr. in Detroit. Mac Hollins, who looks jacked as fuck. He's huge. In Atlanta. Yeah. He's going to be playing with Drake London and Bijan Robinson. Yeah. All right, Frankie, let's get to tight ends here. There's really one that's a guy that I am actually targeting in drafts. I've really warmed up to him. I like the situation. I like the value. I think he's going to be the number 1 target in New York. It is Darren Waller leaving the Raiders, going to the Giants, playing with, good old Danny Dimes. I think he's going to be the number 1 target, man. What do you think about Darren Waller?
Love
All over him.
Yeah. In his ADP right now, 66, that's going to rise. I mean, what I mean by that is it's going to get harder to get him. I think he's not going to go 6th round, 7th round. I think he's going to go 4th, 5th round, John. I mean, he looks really good he's Danny Dimes' guy. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. The amount of volume he can sustain that we've seen in a very similar situation, I think, than what he was in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Except now, they don't have any number. There is not a one receiver on that team. There's nobody that's coming out as being the one that's demanding targets. Darren Waller is going to be that guy. I really believe that. At PPR, I think he's going to be absolute gold. If you're in a tight end league that gives bonus points for tight ends, I think he's absolute gold. I'm targeting him before Kyle Pitts. If I can get Kelsey in the first, I'll take it in the right situation. I'm targeting Mark Andrews every 3rd round that I could possibly get him in the 3rd round. I want Mark Andrews. And after Mark Andrews, for me, it's Darren Waller or bust. That's it.
I want you to describe this real quick. You brought up a brilliant point the other day when we were bullshitting around that you said, if I end up taking Kelsey in round 1, this might be an interesting guy to pick up late in that 6th or 7th round. It's going to be 5th or 6th by all said and done, to put in my tight end position and put Kelsey in my flexi, right? But you can put Kelsey in your flex.
Hey, you be careful putting that flexi in
right?
Kelsey. Okay. Yeah. Shit.
But that's a brilliant idea. I thought it was a really interesting idea. So I wanted to give you kudos.
Thank you. Yeah, that strategy, I did that, and it seems to work out. You know, when you're taking tight ends, you're typically going to be soft in one position, and if you're soft in receiver, you take Kelsey in your first round as your first pick. You can play him in your flex. He's going to outperform your other flex players, no question about it. Mm-hmm. And then you can draft a guy like Darren Waller, and in a PPR to have Darren Waller as your tight end and Kelsey as your flex, and you're getting some of those other secondary receivers, but you're only starting 2 of them. I love it. I absolutely love that strategy. So it's ballsy, and it's going to scare the shit out of you while you're drafting.
Shout out Dennis McGlone.
Shout out Dennis McGlone, multiple tight end strategy. I haven't seen it work out yet, but it's fun. It's cool. You know? Yeah. All right, let's move on here to a couple other tight ends. None of these guys are guys you're really going to be targeting and drafting, but it is important to know that they're there. Dalton Schultz no longer in Dallas. He is now in Houston, just moved down the road a couple hours. Mike Gesicki in New England. They run a lot of double tight ends there, but I think Hunter Henry is really going to be the main target. Mike Gesicki was never a great pass catching tight end anyway. They really used him as a blocker, you know, for the most part in the past couple of years. Hayden Hurst now with Carolina. That could be interesting. Yeah, that could be interesting. Hayden Hurst has shown that he can bring back tight end value for fantasy football. Being there with Bryce Young and with a rookie quarterback looking for quick hits and a little bigger target for him, I think that could be interesting with Hayden Hurst. I would keep an eye on him if you're looking at streaming. Foster Moreau, also interesting as far as a streaming candidate. He left the Raiders and is now in New Orleans with his quarterback that he's been used to with Derek Carr. I think that could be a real streaming candidate for you as well. Jordan Akins in Cleveland, Austin Hooper in Las Vegas, Irv Smith in Cincinnati. I think that's an interesting one as well for streaming. Yeah, there's definitely value there, especially if something happens to Tyler Boyd. We saw that last year. Hayden Hurst really exploded at tight end when Tyler Boyd in the slot was out. So keep an eye on Irv Smith as a streamer as well. OJ Howard, I don't think he has anything left in him. He's with the Raiders, and Josh Oliver with Minnesota. All right, guys. That is our new faces in new places, wide receivers and tight ends. I thought that was great, Frankie. What a great show.
Well done.
Yeah,
well
I mean, really good. We're getting so close here to actually drafting. I can taste it.
Can't wait.
I can taste it. Tune in every Monday. We've got mock draft Mondays up until draft day, up until season or week 1. Join us next week. We're going to be talking some interesting stuff here. Okay. We're going to be talking values, baby. Value City. What are the big values out there? We're going to talk about sleepers. All right. We're going to talk about, some busts, maybe some guys that we're totally in on, some guys that were totally off my board. We mentioned it today. There were a couple guys I'm not even considering drafting. We're going to talk about them as well. So tune in next week, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Frankly Fantasy Football, Facebook, Instagram, Frankly Fantasy Football, and on X, formerly Twitter, at Frankly Fantasy F. Frankie, you got anything else going on for us, man? Anything
just, fantasy football legend, baby. Fantasy, don't you forget it.
Hey, I got a shout out too. I got my Star 69 shirt on. Shout out to Joe Herendine and his band. I just saw them play this weekend. Yeah, Star 69. I love it. It's all 90s grunge music. It was a blast, man. Yeah. Oh yeah. I can't hear shit right now. It's just blasting my face off. All right. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Monday for a mock draft and Wednesday for the episode. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.